Before we go into the crime statistics for the month, I want to talk about the weather situation. As you've all been seeing, it keeps evolving. At this moment, we are still in a lot of the parts of the city experiencing just rain or a little bit of sleet, but nothing that has fully become snow in some parts of the city, at least. Every part of the city, as everyone knows, experiences somewhat different realities, but the storm is certainly arriving later than some of the projections we had previously. We are tracking it very closely. The National Weather Service does have a winter weather warning in effect. That will be in effect until 4 a.m. today. So here's what we know. We expect the storm to intensify between now and the early evening. We expect more wind. Right now it's not too windy, but we do expect the winds to increase, gusts as high as 35 to 45 miles per hour. Now, this one is going to be different than some of the other storms we've seen. Again, slow developing. When it gets going, we'll see, we think, typically snow in the 1 inch to 2 inch an hour range. 1 inch an hour, not too bad. When you get to 2 inches an hour and more, it gets to be a much greater challenge, particularly for the sanitation department. I want to say at the outset, they do an outstanding job. They've really been stars in these last storms, clearing the streets. But you get over 2 inches an hour, it gets harder and harder. For the beginning, we think it'll be less than that, but then there will be a point later where we could experience a very intense burst of snow. This phrase says a lot, thunder snow. And that could be between 2 and 4 inches per hour. And that we could get that. We're not sure, obviously, and it could be for a limited time. It could be for a somewhat longer time. We do expect the main body of the snow to taper off between 7 and 8 p.m. The citywide projection has changed several times in the last 24 hours. Right now, the broad citywide projection is in the 8 inches to 12 inches range. Again, you'll see a lot of difference depending on the part of the city. Generally, more accumulation in the northern parts of the city, less in the southern parts of the city. The highest we've seen any projection of at this point is 16 inches. Again, I think that's a small chance we'll see that anywhere, but there may be a few parts of the city where we see that. Right now, again, the places that are going to see more snow are northern Queens, Manhattan, and the Bronx. Less snow in Staten Island, southern Queens, and Brooklyn. Look, everyone is monitoring and making adjustments as we go along. The snow plows are out. As the commissioner will tell you, they would love to get to work, but they can't until there's a certain amount of snow on the ground. But the salting has been happening. That will continue. Alternate side parking is canceled today and tomorrow. We have Code Blue in effect. The sanitation department, again, out full force, 2,400 workers, 693 salt spreaders, 1,600 plows waiting to go into action. In terms of focal points, we are going to make sure there is extra focus by the sanitation department around our schools to make sure they're getting a lot of attention as the end of the school day comes. And obviously for schools that have after school, that will continue until after school is out. NYPD will also be focusing on schools to make sure they're getting all the support they need in terms of directing traffic around the schools. The Rockaway ferry line is suspended as of 12:15 because of wind conditions, and Staten Island ferry is on a modified schedule as well. Want to now say to people, even though this has started as less of a storm than what we expected, later on it's going to be very intense potentially, particularly around the rush hour. So I want to urge all New Yorkers, use common sense. If you can leave work early and get home earlier, please do if you have that option. If you have to travel, use mass transit. If you have to be on the roads during the typical rush hours, go slow. Be careful, because it could be, again, a very intense burst of snow right around that time. Want everyone to please check on your neighbors, check on senior citizens, check on folks that have any medical conditions, make sure they get help if they need it. And for anyone who's dealing with a heat or hot water problem, please call 311. It's very important that gets reported right away so we can do something about it. Again, reminding everyone, for something like heat and hot water, call 311. For a real emergency, for a life-threatening emergency, call 911. Bottom line, don't take this for granted. Take it seriously. Take precautions, especially in that late afternoon, early evening time. Just a few words in Spanish, and then we'll take questions on the storm, and then we'll go back to the rest of the press conference. Es posible que la tormenta de hoy traiga nieve y fuertes vientos. Estamos tomando todas las medidas de seguridad necesarias y pedimos a los neoyorquinos que hagan lo mismo. No salgan a la calle, usen transporte público si deben salir, y cuiden a sus vecinos. With that, I want to take any questions on the weather situation way back there.
Given the prediction for this burst of snow later and thunder, this and that, do you still stand by your decision to keep the schools open, given dismissal 3-ish?
Yeah, we have to make these decisions in real time. We had conversations yesterday afternoon, late yesterday after the 11 p.m. update from the National Weather Service. We talked this morning around 6 or 6:30 a.m. We kept getting, bluntly, information that didn't give us a consistent enough. I'm not saying this against the Weather Service. They're doing a fine job. I'm saying the information we had didn't point to a clear and consistent reason to shut down school. We have to remember when we shut down school, we create a lot of chain reaction. And I can speak as a parent. It's a tremendous dislocation to parents. For a lot of parents, whether they are two parents who are working or a single parent who's working, it creates a lot of challenges if the child can't go to school. They don't always have a good alternative for their child. We knew kids could get to school safely. Obviously, we've seen, the storm developing late. We knew we would have them in good shape at school. Sanitation Commissioner and I checked in about what conditions would be like at the end of school. We felt confident about safety. After school, want to urge all parents, if you have your kids in after school and if you go to pick them up, if you can get there earlier or take some extra time to get there, please do. Obviously, after schools, as per usual, we'll have personnel that stay as long as necessary to make sure every child is picked up. But in the scheme of things, when we balanced all the factors, yes, I think we made the right decision. We're getting new information now, but that decision has to be made at latest by early morning hours to reach parents in time. Okay, other questions on the storm? Yes, Mara.
Mr. Mayor, are there any NYCHA apartments that currently are out of heat or hot water?
We've got 4 developments. I'll give you the update. And I want to again remind all public housing residents, if you're having any problem with heat or hot water, call the Customer Care Center. As you know, we put some additional resources into speeding up response, and those are in play now. We have 4 buildings right now at Bushwick 1 and Bushwick 2. We expect both at this moment to be fixed in the course of the day. Independence in Brooklyn, also expected to be fixed in the course of the day. Beach 41st Street in Queens, also expected to be fixed in the course of the day. And 2 of those are hot water only problems at this moment. 2 of them are heat.
And, sorry, how many people is that?
I don't have that. Oh, you would ask that question. Okay. Bushwick 1, you're thorough. Bushwick 1, hot water is out. And Beach 41st, hot water is out. From what I have here, Marcia, we don't have a heat problem in either place. Again, we expect those both fixed today. The 2 with heat problems are Bushwick 2 and Independence, both in Brooklyn. Yes?
As you mentioned, depending on where you live in the city, depends on how much snow you'll get. So southern parts of the city, maybe just an inch. But the northern part could get that 8 to 10 inches. Are you sending extra crews to northern Manhattan, North Bronx? Because even this past snowstorm, people in the North Bronx complained that they didn't get enough services up there.
Yeah, Dean, I appreciate the question because you will remember before my time, there was a lot of controversy on this question, and I was one of the people raising a critique about it as public advocate that the city has to be able to move resources around as needed. I've seen this in previous storms. particularly, you remember we had the biggest blizzard in history during our term, and I thought the commissioner and her team did a great job moving assets around as needed. So, Commissioner, what are your plans for today?
So at this time, because the forecast has been shifting, we are not anticipating 1 inch anywhere in the city at this point. We are anticipating 8 to 12 citywide. So we have not at this point moved equipment, but that will be dependent on whether or not the forecast changes again, or whether or not we are seeing more significant issues in any part of the city, and then we will adjust.
What should people do, though? It comes 24 hours later and they're still stuck, or there's ice or problems in their neighborhood.
So if there's ever any problem, you can call 311. We will not take complaints until we finish plowing and salting, but you should not, it won't be 24 hours.
Right,
We do not anticipate that it will be 24 hours for us to complete this job, but you should also definitely track what we are doing on Plow NYC. We will be clearing that map before the snow starts so that there isn't any sense that you got salted earlier today and we didn't come back. We're going to restart the clock once we really get to some plowable depths.
Hey, let me add to this. The important thing here is to look at the timelines in previous situations. So the worst storm ever was 27, 28, what was it, inches, do you remember?
Oh, no, it was yeah, it was like 28.9.
28.9, okay. So what we're hearing here,
I would have to-
typically around the city, 8 to 12 inches, nothing to scoff at, but this commissioner had to deal with a 29-inch snowstorm, the worst blizzard in New York City history, and the turnaround on that was unbelievable how fast they were managed, especially on the main roads, to get them open. And that was before she had the new equipment for the smaller streets, which she has an ample amount of now. She has more personnel. I think Commissioner Garcia and her team are doing extraordinary things. So if this remains true, and Mother Nature can throw a curveball either way, but if you're talking 8 to 12 inches in most parts of the city, with this kind of personnel already out salting and moving, and they have the whole overnight, they're going to do a great job. I don't think you're going to find many places that are snowed in the morning, but we'll be vigilant. Again, one thing people can do, and I know if you already went to work and you brought your car, you may not have a lot of choices. If you do have a choice, get home early, because the best thing we can do for our friends at the sanitation department is stay off the road if at all possible. Other questions on the weather before we move on? See if there's any other questions. Going once, going, yep.
I know you mentioned putting some extra resources for NYCHA, and I saw yesterday that they were deploying a situation room. Can you give us just a sense of what the city has done to beef up its response to potential boiler and hot water?
Yeah, the broad stroke is it's more of a war room approach, and obviously having additional resources both in terms of personnel at their disposal and equipment is going to be very, very helpful. So I'm very heartened that we're starting the day with only 2 developments having a heat problem. I'd like them to be 0, but only 2 is a good beginning. I also would say in the scheme of things, this temperature dynamic is better than what we've seen in past storms. I mean, I feel for the commissioner and her team, because some of those other blizzards, they were dealing with 0 or sub-zero temperatures and very, very intense winds. This one, the winds, not too bad. It'll get worse later on, but not too bad. But the temperatures right now, you know, we're hovering between 30 and 35 degrees. That's actually very good for what they have to do for everything, yeah, for the effectiveness of the salt, but also in terms of all New Yorkers and their heat situation. Thank God it's not bitter, bitter cold out like it was, you know, a couple months back. Yes, Rich.
Any sense that the tides and the winds and the arrival of the storm could conspire to create any coastal flooding?
I don't know, Joe, have you heard on?
Yeah, just localized flooding, nothing like last week. Last week was caused by the winds, the tides, and the moon, and we don't have that. We don't have that equation this time around. So you'll have some minor flooding in those areas that normally flood, but nothing like last week. Yeah.
Okay, last call on the weather. Okay, let's turn to Commissioner O'Neill.